MindLoom Media. Think smarter. Live better.
You know, it's strange. From childhood, we are told one thing again and again: study hard, get good grades, find a secure job, and your life will be set. But have you ever noticed most people who follow this path still struggle financially?
Exactly. And what's even more surprising is some people who are not highly educated end up becoming extremely wealthy. So the question is, what do they know that others don't?
And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast where we explore powerful books that can change the way we think about life, success, and money. I'm really excited about today's episode because we're starting our series with one of the most influential personal finance books ever written. Today's episode is about a book that has changed millions of lives around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Today we're discussing Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, if you've ever wondered why some people seem to build wealth while others struggle financially, even when they earn good salaries, this book tries to answer that question. And honestly, this isn't just a book, it's more like a wake-up call. A book that challenges everything we've been taught about money.
And if you're someone who feels like no matter how much I earn, it's never enough, then this podcast might hit you personally.
Exactly. And what makes this book fascinating is that it's not written like a typical finance textbook. Instead, it's written through a story about two fathers who had completely different beliefs about money. Two fathers, two mindsets, and two completely different financial outcomes. And honestly, that contrast is what makes this book so memorable.
Right. One father believed in working hard for money. The other believed in learning how money works so it can work for you. And that simple difference changes everything. So let's start with the central idea of the book. Robert Kiyosaki grew up in Hawaii and had the influence of two father figures. Not literally two biological fathers, but two father figures.
Right. One was his real father, whom he calls Poor Dad. Now, Poor Dad was actually very intelligent. He had a PhD, was highly respected, and worked as a government employee, but financially, always struggling.
So basically, someone who followed the traditional path that many parents encourage: study hard, get good grades, find a secure job.
Exactly. But despite all his education, he struggled financially for most of his life. Money was always a source of stress. And then there's the other father, Rich Dad. Yes. And the other one was his best friend's father, a businessman, not very highly educated, but extremely rich, which he called Rich Dad.
Interestingly, Rich Dad was not highly educated, but he was a successful businessman who eventually became one of the wealthiest people in the area.
So here we have two intelligent people, one father with academic knowledge, one father with financial knowledge.
And here's where things get interesting. Both fathers had completely different beliefs about money.
Exactly. The Poor Dad used to say things like, money is the root of all evil. Study hard so you can find a good job.
While the Rich Dad said, the love of money is the root of all evil. Learn how money works so money can work for you.
That's such a powerful idea because most people spend their entire lives working for money, but very few learn how to make money work for them.
Yes, exactly. Same world, same opportunities, but completely different thinking.
And that's the first big lesson. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how you think about money.
You know, this reminds me of real life, especially in places like the Gulf. So many people come here, work for years, earn decent salaries, but still, after 10 to 15 years, they have nothing saved.
That's true. And it's not because they didn't earn enough. It's because nobody taught them how to manage money. Nobody taught them how to grow money.
Exactly. We were taught how to earn, but never taught how to build wealth.
When this book came out, it challenged a very deep belief. A job is the safest way to live.
And for many people, that belief is everything. Because from childhood, that's what we hear from parents, teachers, society.
But the book asks a dangerous question. What if that belief is actually keeping you stuck?
And that's uncomfortable because it forces you to question your entire life path.
Exactly. And that's why this book is powerful, but also controversial.
There's a moment in the book where young Robert goes to his rich dad and says, "I want to be rich. Teach me."
And instead of giving him a lecture, his rich dad gives him a job,
But here's the twist. He pays him almost nothing.
which makes Robert frustrated. He feels cheated. He feels like quitting.
And honestly, most of us would quit. We'd say, "This is not worth my time."
But that's where the lesson begins.
Because rich dad wasn't trying to give him money. He was trying to teach him something deeper.
Most people work for money, but the rich learn how not to depend on it.
And that's a completely different mindset. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like no matter how much you earn, your money just disappears?
Every single month, salary comes in, bills go out, and you're back to zero again.
Exactly. And that cycle has a name.
The rat race.
This is one of the most famous concepts from the book is what Kiyosaki calls the rat race.
And honestly, when you first hear it, you realize how accurate it is.
The rat race describes the cycle that many people live in. It usually starts with education. You go to school, you graduate, then you get a job.
And once you get a job, you start earning money, but then the bills start coming. Rent, car payments, credit cards, utilities.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. When people get a raise or promotion, they usually increase their lifestyle. They buy a bigger house, a more expensive car, maybe new gadgets, like better phone.
So even though their income increases, their expenses increase as well, which means they still depend on their job to survive.
And that's the trap. You work harder to support a lifestyle that forces you to keep working harder.
So now they need that job. They can't leave it. They can't take risks. They are stuck.
And that's the trap.
That cycle can continue for decades. People wake up, go to work, pay bills, and repeat, sometimes without ever questioning it.
You know, this reminds me of someone I know. He moved to the UAE, started with a small job, simple life, saving money.
That sounds like a good start.
Yes, but then slowly, he upgraded everything. New car on EMI, bigger apartment, expensive lifestyle.
Let me guess. Savings disappeared?
Not just disappeared. He went into debt.
And now?
Now he can't leave his job, even if he wants to, because every month he's working just to survive.
That's the rat race.
Let's break this down clearly. Step 1, you earn money. Step 2, you increase expenses. Step 3, you depend on salary. Step 4, you repeat this for years
And here's the scary part. This can go on for 20, 30, even 40 years.
and at the end, you're tired, but not financially free.
But why does this happen? Why do people fall into this trap?
Two main reasons: fear, desire,
Fear of not having money. So we keep working.
and desire for a better lifestyle. So we keep spending.
It's like no matter what you do, you're stuck between fear and desire.
And that's exactly what Rich Dad tried to teach. If you don't control your emotions, money will control your life.
Most people are not poor because they earn less. They are poor because they spend everything they earn.
And sometimes even more. Imagine this. You're running on a treadmill.
You're moving, but going nowhere.
That's the rat race.
So the question is, how do you escape?
And this is where the book gives its most powerful lesson.
A lesson that sounds simple, but changes everything.
Don't work for money. Make money work for you.
And to understand that, we need to learn something very important, though.
Something that most people misunderstand completely. Both. Assets versus liabilities. Now we arrive at the most important lesson in the book: assets versus liabilities.
If there's one concept from this book that can completely change your financial life, it's this.
Assets and liabilities.
This concept is surprisingly simple, but incredibly powerful.
Rich Dad explained it like this: an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
That's it?
That's it. But people complicate it, and that's where they make mistakes.
Wait. So the things we think are assets may actually be liabilities?
Exactly. And this is where most people get shocked. Let's take a few examples.
Okay.
Your car, is it an asset or a liability?
People would say asset.
Wrong.
Why?
Because every month, it takes money from you. Fuel, maintenance, insurance.
So it's a liability.
Exactly.
What about a house? That must be an asset, right?
Not always.
Wait, what?
If you're living in it and paying EMI, maintenance, bills, it's taking money from your pocket. So technically, it's a liability.
That changes everything. So what are examples of real assets?
Assets could include rental properties, businesses, stocks and investments, royalties, digital products, basically anything that generates income.
Okay.
Let's make it crystal clear. Asset equals generates income. Liability equals generates expense.
Simple, but powerful. And the idea is to focus on building assets first.
Yes, the rich buy assets. Those assets generate income, and that income can then be used to buy more assets.
Which creates a cycle of wealth instead of a cycle of bills.
Now, here's where most people go wrong. They focus on increasing income, upgrading lifestyle, and
But they ignore.
building assets.
So what should a beginner do?
Start very simple. Step 1. Save a small portion of your income, even 10%.
Okay. Manageable.
Step 2. Don't spend that money on lifestyle. Use it to buy an asset.
Like what?
Let's keep it very simple. A small online business. A product to sell like Amazon. Something that can generate income.
So the goal is to create income sources.
Exactly, even if it's small in the beginning.
You know what's interesting? Most people feel rich when they buy expensive things
But in reality, they're becoming poorer.
because they are increasing liabilities, not assets.
Think of it like planting seeds.
Okay.
Assets are seeds that grow into trees that keep giving fruits.
And liabilities?
They're like plants that need constant water but give nothing back.
That's powerful. So basically, most people spend their whole life working to maintain liabilities.
Yes, and that's why they stay stuck. If you remember just one thing from this podcast, remember this: the rich buy assets first, the poor buy liabilities first.
And the middle class?
Buy liabilities, thinking they are assets.
So now the big question is,
How do we actually apply this in real life?
how do we change our mindset and escape the cycle?
And more importantly, why do most people still fail? Even after understanding this?
Yeah. And I think a lot of listeners might be feeling that right now. Like, I understand this, but can I actually do it?
Exactly, and that's where the real battle begins. Not outside, but inside your mind.
But before we move on, let's quickly recap for our listeners. So far, we've talked about the two fathers, the rat race, assets versus liabilities. But here's the truth. Even after understanding all this, most people still don't change.
And most people know this, but fear holds them back.
Fear of losing money, fear of failure, fear of what will people say,
And the biggest one?
fear of uncertainty,
Because a job feels safe,
predictable,
even if it's limiting, even if it's stressful, even if it keeps you stuck.
it still feels safe.
There are people who have been in the same job for 10, 15, 20 years, not because they love it, but because they're afraid to leave.
And deep inside, they know they want more.
More freedom, more time, more control over their life.
But fear keeps them where they are.
Job security is often an illusion.
Because at any moment, things can change.
Company downsizes, market shifts, unexpected events.
And suddenly, that safe job isn't so safe anymore.
This is why the book emphasizes something very important: financial education and
Not school education.
real-world education. Understanding how money works, how to build income streams, how to manage risk.
So, how does a beginner start thinking differently?
Let's make it very simple. Instead of asking, how can I afford this? Ask, how can I make money to afford this?
That's a powerful shift.
It forces your brain to think, not like a consumer, but like a creator.
Okay, let's make this practical for listeners. What can someone do starting today?
Simple 5-step plan. Step-by-step action plan. Step 1. Track your money. Know where your money is going.
Most people don't even do that.
Step 2. Reduce unnecessary expenses. Cut small leaks. Step 3. Start saving, even small. 5% to 10% is enough to begin. Step 4. Buy your first asset. Something that generates income.
Even if it's small.
Yes, especially if it's small. Step 5. Reinvest the income. Let money grow,
I think a lot of people feel like, I don't have enough money to start.
and that's okay, because it's not about how much you start with. It's about starting.
Small steps, repeated consistently, can completely change your life.
At the end of the day, this book is not just about money.
It's about freedom.
Freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom of life.
And that's what everyone really wants.
If you take one thing from this podcast, let it be this: don't spend your life working for money. Build a life where money works for you.
And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to start.
If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear this.
And in the next episode, we'll break down another powerful book.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing.
And take control of your financial future.
If you found this valuable, don't forget to subscribe. Keep learning, keep growing with MindLoom Media.